Good afternoon, knife nerds. Today we are revisiting the Ferrum Forge Fortis 2.0. This knife was produced in 2018 and it was a collaborative effort between We Knives and Ferrum Forge. The knife was designed by Ferrum Forge and produced by We. And at that time, I feel like the knife was probably overlooked or kind of fell on a cold audience at that time. It did have some very interesting milling patterns that were available. It came in several different milling patterns, like 5 or 6 different patterns. And I was lucky enough to pick this up on the aftermarket a few months back and absolutely fell in love with this knife. And I really hate to see that it may not ever be produced again. And there were not actually that many of them made, and they are extremely hard to come by on the aftermarket today. Very rarely do they pop up for sale. And so let me move on here for a second and take a look at the pouch that came with this knife. It came with this dog tag, first run edition 2018 S35VN blade steel. Just a very basic We Knives pouch, and the card of authenticity, first production run 2018. Now if you are looking for one of these, I wish you the best of luck. Like I say, they're very hard to come by, and unfortunately I don't know if they'll ever make it back to production. I would love to see We and Ferrum Forge put another run of these out on the market, and you know, maybe they could make some updates. We Knives has come a long ways in their skill since 2018. And I think they could do some different things with this knife that would really update it and make it newer. And so let's see here. We are going to go through a few specs real quick. This is an 8.25 inch overall length with a blade length of 3.5 inches and a thickness behind the edge of 0.16, so very thin and slicey behind the edge. I have put my mirrored edge on it with my wicked edge there, and it is incredibly slicey, just an absolute laser beam. It is a drop point style with a S35VN blade and a stone washed finish. It's an extremely aggressive stone wash so that it looks sort of apocalyptic, and it doesn't show a lot of wear when you're carrying this around as a user. And this is the bronze anodized titanium finish, rough stone washed. It is a standoff construction, so there is no back spacer, and the clip is reversible from tip up right or left hand carry only. You can't go tip down with it. Let's see. The pocket clip here, just a very kind of plain Jane milled titanium pocket clip with a little port drilled through the top of it there. Nothing fancy about that at all. It's quite functional. Spring is very good. Retention is very good. Slides in and out of pocket easy. I really don't have a lot of complaints with this pocket clip, other than it's just kind of plain. They could definitely spice that up a little bit, and it would certainly add to the attraction of this knife. I do like the cutout for the lock bar and how that kind of just arced down and made that little bend there. Very interesting design feature. And the through work, or the milling pattern in the handle scale, it's kind of this, you know, fence post construction through here. Very solid, rigid, nothing flexible about it, and it is very light for the size of the knife. This is a pretty large knife, as you can see here. When I get my hand on that, it's a pretty large knife. 3.5 inch blade. It's not a 4-inch blade, so we can't call it huge, but it is a very full-size knife, and it has amazing amazing ergonomics. We've got this interesting jimping here on the thumb ramp. Not quite like a lot of jimping that I see out there. This is like some scalloped little half circles cut out of the spine there, and it's not sharp and it's not super aggressive, but it is very grippy. So I think this is some of the best jimping that I may have ever felt. It's kind of just that perfect medium where, you know, everything is chamfered very beautifully and all the edges are softened up, but there's enough depth to that milling there to give it phenomenal traction. Now, you can choke up on this. It is a functional finger choil, so you can get all the way up in here and you can put your thumb on that thumb ramp, and that gives you some good leverage. But due to this arc cut out of the top of the blade here, you can choke up even further and get really on top of that edge for some serious fine work with a lot of control. And I think that is probably the most ergonomic blade that I have ever felt as far as choking up and getting close to the work. That thumb scallop that's cut out of the blade right there is absolutely phenomenal for functionality. And I did want to mention that I have made some alterations to this knife. The first being that this is not the original pivot screws for the knife. These are custom pivot screws from tieconnector.com, and they're not meant to fit this knife. This is something that I retrofitted to the knife. I used the original factory barrel and simply replaced the original screws, which were just plain Jane round-headed type domed screws, with these tri-blade kind of milled awesome pivot screws from Tie Connector. And these take a T15, so they're very beefy, so you don't ever have to worry about stripping that screw out. And anyways, if you want more information for that, you can always holler at me on Facebook in the Ferrum Forge Fanatics group, and check that group out. It's pretty awesome. We're just getting it running now, and there's going to be a lot of Ferrum Forge knife discussion and trading and sales going on there. And on to the hardware, which is T6 back here at the body screws. And you just have 4 body screws through those 2 standoffs and 2 through the pocket clip. So those are all T6. And then you got, I think the original pivot was a T8, and this upgraded pivot that I did here is a T15. The second alteration that I made to this knife was skiff bearings. This is obviously a Chinese made knife made by WE Knives, and almost all the WE Knives that I'm aware of, they take the 5mm skiff bearings. 5mm skiff bearings with 1/16 inch balls. And so I put skiff bearings in just about everything that I can fit them in. I absolutely love them, and I'm probably going to do a longer video just about skiff bearings in and of itself, and all the knives that I've put them in and the results that I've gotten from them, etc., etc. But back to this knife today. I would absolutely love to see Ferrum Forge and WE Knives do another batch of the Fortis and the Archbishop. Those were the first 2 knives in the Pro Line series, and they kind of came and went too fast. I think the Fortis was a lot more slept on than the Archbishop, because it's a little bit more of a polarizing design with, you know, kind of a unique sort of a drop point with this heavy swedge and all this shaping and stuff. It's a very aggressive looking knife, so I think a lot of people slept on this design. It did eventually sell out, but you know, at the time when this was still available, it was available up until 2019. I remember that because right at the end of its life cycle, it went on sale on Blade HQ, and I was very tempted to buy it at that time, but I passed on it in favor of different things. And then my interest in Ferrum Forge grew significantly here in 2021, and I sought out to finally pick myself up a Fortis 2.0. I ended up getting two of them, and it took me some time to find them, but I eventually did. I sold the second one to fund other knife projects, but I kept this one because this was my favorite of the two milling patterns that I had. Now, as far as action, I mean, my God, this knife is phenomenal on these skiff bearings, and it's not 100% drop shut, but it's super close. And let me see here, sorry, I'm getting an alert. Okay, got that out of the way. Now it does have this blade cutout here on the top, which lends itself to a perfect middle finger flick. Just one of the best Spidey flicking knives that I own. Boom. Very smooth. Now, the flipper tab. We've got some semi-aggressive jimping on the flipper tab, and the way that it is shaped and the size of it and how it works with this cutout here, man, this is some phenomenal action. Just all around great. You cannot thumb roll it out because the detent is fairly solid, but you can pinch grip and then roll it out like so. So really, you've got at least 3 different deployment methods that I can perform myself with the flipper tab, the Spidey flick, and the pinch and roll. Okay. And what else about it? Now, the tip on this knife really surprised me how thin and dainty that tip gets down to there. We're gonna get some good focus here for a second anyway. And we're lost it again. But yes, this is a very dainty tip that is going to result in some great piercing ability. If you want to punch into a package and slice it wide open, this is the knife that is going to do that for you. It does have a minor swedge here at the top. Everything is chamfered beautifully across the spine of the knife, and within the hole of the thumb opening device there, it is extremely well chamfered. Everything is smooth and soft. And the finger choil, very comfortable. Nothing there, just digging into your finger or anything like that. Very smooth and comfy, as you would expect from WE knives. And everything chamfered beautifully around the handle scales. And the lock bar relief there is on the inside to keep that visually appealing there on the outside. And there is no internal milling, obviously, because the handles are already milled all the way through and they are extremely lightweight. For the size of this knife, it feels very comfortable, very well balanced. Great grip, great choke up, smooth as butter, phenomenal action. High quality materials, high quality production, beautiful design, and I would absolutely adore it if Ferrum Forge and WE Knives would put this back on the market. And this, along with the Archbishop too, I think both of those are extremely deserving knives of a second run, and they could get that done. Oh, the other thing I wanted to mention on the back side of the blade here, it does say first production run there. I'm not a big fan of that particular type of badging. I guess it was a trending thing back in those years in 2018, but not very visually appealing to me. And if they do another batch, obviously that wouldn't be there, so that would be definitely a bonus. Other than that, you guys have a great rest of your day. I'm going to get out of here, and thanks for checking out the Fortis 2.0.